Since House of the Dragon and Star Wars, a lot of people have asked me about my acting process. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how I approach characters, both performing them and writing them. This is just the way that I do things, the way that I was trained when I went to drama school. You don't necessarily have to use all of these techniques, but it's how I start. Part 1, creating a character. I really like to start with a character's physicality and the way that they move and relate to their bodies. And for an example, I'll use the film Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, which came out this year. My character, Belladonna, is a vampire, and she's also kind of low-key the villain of the film. So to begin with, I looked at snakes and the way that they move. You might notice when standing that Belladonna comes to rest with her hips cocked and her shoulders cocked the other way. And in art and sculpture, this pose is called an S-curve or sometimes a contrapposto. And she also turns her wrists out a little bit, so it's feminine, but it's also kind of childish. She takes that curve up into her neck as well. When she speaks, she often keeps her chin down like this, but then when she wants to strike out, she'll sometimes emphasize it by bringing the chin up suddenly like that. Again, very like a snake. I guess snakes don't really have chins? When she gets angry, she makes herself very, very wide and she hisses.
Why don't you sit down? Finish your cards.
Belladonna also holds eye contact a lot when she's speaking. In natural conversation, people don't often do that. Like, we will look away as we think about something, we remember things. Sometimes we might even say half a sentence with our eyes closed, but Belladonna doesn't. She's very straight on. She looks at people the way predators look at prey, direct, unbreaking. Whenever she's speaking, Belladonna uses a lot of precise articulation. She really gets her mouth and tongue and teeth around every letter of what she's saying.
Did Dee Dee know you sleep with other men?
Yeah, we have a deal. I only let them fuck me in the mouth and pussy.
She's a vampire, so consuming people is pretty central to her identity. I chose to physically emphasize her mouth and teeth, and her dark lip really brings out this effect too. Belladonna's makeup artist was Danny Rose, and he really understood the assignment. Belladonna's voice resonates further forward in her mouth than mine does naturally. You might be able to hear I'm resonating like a little bit towards the kind of center and back of my mouth, whereas Belladonna really pushes it forward. She's resonating on the edge of the hard palate up here. It's a little bit nasal.
We're expanding the modeling agency again. He sent me here to hunt for talent.
Her average pitch is a little bit higher than mine too. She spends a lot of time up here in this kind of range. It's a little bit forced. It's almost a little bit fake, you might say, which is a clue as to her character. The reason I made all these physical decisions is this. Belladonna is putting on an act. She is trying to fool other people and also fool herself into thinking that she is happy living this vampiric life, when actually it makes her miserable. The body, the voice, the energy, her facial reactions being like a little bit bigger than a normal person's would be, it's all part of this high energy Harley Quinn act that she's doing as she tries to fool people. And that honestly made her a really interesting challenge to play as an actor, because when you're playing somebody who's putting on an act, you're putting on an act as someone who's putting on an act. It's kind of like acting squared. And so I need to be able to show the audience that A, this is a performance the character is putting on, but also B, you need to be able to see the real person underneath that and understand her reasons for doing this. I've been quite drawn to characters who do this over the last few years. So in House of the Dragon, Shariko Loha is also putting on a bit of a performance to try and unsettle people. When I did The Prince on stage in London, Hotspur, my character in that, is doing a similar thing. The key to making a performance like that work is finding those moments where the mask just drops. Something else I like to do is recreate a character's core memories from their backstory. So when I played Jess in Django for Sky and Netflix, one of the key things I was told about her was that when she was a child, her father tried to drown her in a horse trough. So I ran a bath in my apartment and I put my own hand on the back of my head and I pushed my head down into the water safely. Obviously, I wasn't in any real danger. But I was just trying to recreate that physical sensation of the water being in my nose and my ears and my eyes to try and conjure up this imaginary traumatic memory for her. For Belladonna, I did a bunch of improvisations with Morgana Ignis, who was my co-star, and also with our director, Valentina V, exploring the moments where those characters met for the first time and also exploring the moment she first met Dracula. Part 2. Delivering lines. I like to use something called Laban technique. Rudolf von Laban was an Austro-Hungarian dancer who theorized that there are 8 kinds of movement: float, glide, dab, flick, press, ring, slash, and thrust. Laban exercises consist of practicing these 8 movements or efforts, and then you can also apply them to delivering lines. That's quite abstract, so it'll be helpful if I showed you. Belladonna spends a lot of time in flick and dab.
Oh yeah, I'm a vampire. You know, I never would have guessed that you were. All the months that we worked together, you just seemed kind of average.
Lighter efforts are where she likes to stay. Again, it's all part of this act she's performing. She's keeping up this appearance that everything is fine, everything's light, everything's fun, everything's jumpy, everything's energetic. Later on in the film, her efforts sometimes get a little bit heavier. She also flits quite erratically between light ones and heavy ones.
He does not gaslight me! Disengage your lesbian feminist therapist brain. He doesn't show love the way a human would. He speaks every language and he's been everywhere. I barely remember 9/11. He remembers the last 20 9/11s.
I find Laban really useful if I get stuck, because if you're rehearsing or performing take after take after take, you can be doing the same line 100 times and it can start to feel stale. And I find a really good way to just shake things up is to use a different Laban effort. Like, okay, what have I've been doing like flick a lot? What if I just try this line in glide? What if I try it in ring or press? Or just change it up a bit, you know? I even do this when I'm voice acting. When I played Nocturne in Baldur's Gate 3, and when I played Aranai Lyroon in the new Sojourn audio drama Faithless, I did spend a lot of time on their body language, even though those characters don't have bodies. It's all kind of virtual or just imaginary, right? You might be thinking that all of that sounds weirdly technical. I mean, isn't acting just about feeling emotions? And yes, it is. But as the famous Russian director Konstantin Stanislavski reminds us in his book An Actor Prepares, emotions are fickle things. You can't always rely on having the right feelings. Sometimes if you're doing a scene, the muse will descend and you'll just be totally in it. But you can't count on that happening every time. Techniques like Laban are designed to turn talent into skill. It's something that can be reliably summoned. Remember that between all the different angles and takes and rehearsals, you might be performing a scene for days. And when you're a professional actor, you need to be able to do it every time, as many times as it takes. And by the way, these techniques do summon genuine emotional inspiration. There was a moment during the filming of Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend where I broke down crying for real because I accessed some dark feelings in my performance that I hadn't thought about in a long time. It all sounds technical when you explain it, but creativity's like that, you know? I mean, I guess like recipes sound very technical, but then cookies are delicious. Some directors are cool with you improvising lines on set, but honestly that varies. I would say that about 20% of the dialogue in Django was improvised, which was really cool. That was the kind of set that they ran. Whereas on House of the Dragon, when we shot that, the writer's strike was on, and so everything had to be performed exactly as it was written on the page. It really just depends. Most of the time though, when it comes to line delivery, I just try and remember what my character wants, what she's trying to get in the scene, why is she saying this particular thing, and what's gonna happen if she doesn't get what she wants right now. Part 3. What is good acting? This one's an interesting question because I think that sometimes when people say, this is good acting, what we mean is, I enjoyed watching this. We're not really evaluating the craft, we're just being like, yay, I enjoyed it, or boo, didn't enjoy it. A philosopher would call these non-cognitive statements, which might sound a little bit insulting, like you're not cognizant, like you're just the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz, you don't have a brain. But it just means that those sorts of statements are about how we feel rather than a true or false statement about the world. The rub is, of course, that people can enjoy or not enjoy a performance for all kinds of reasons that have nothing to do with whether it's technically good. There are actors who I don't enjoy watching, but that has nothing to do with whether the performance is technically good. I suspect that there is a slight gendered and racial element to this. Like, if you look up best acting compilations on YouTube, you may notice that almost all of the actors in them are white dudes. And also Meryl Streep. Here's some ones that don't fit that mold. Kirsten Dunst's performance in The Power of the Dog, one of my favorite performances in modern cinema. I think she's incredible in that. Kind of cheering for the home team here. I'm a little biased, but I think Emma Darcy's performance in season 2 of House of the Dragon was amazing. I thought they absolutely nailed it. Just the subtlety and the relaxation, like they make it look easy. It's phenomenal. Again, kind of cheering for the home team, but I thought Amanda Stenberg's performance in The Acolyte was really good. They had to play identical twins and differentiate them, and that's not an easy thing to do. That's really difficult. Good acting is relative to the story that's being told. And a really good illustration of this is Amazon Prime's show, The Boys. If you haven't seen it, The Boys is a satire of American media and politics that's deliberately shocking and extreme. There's a lot of graphic sex and ultra-violence and superhero stuff going on. And part of the point is that no matter how extreme they make the show, the reality of the United States is always worse. The acting in The Boys is quite big, and it's meant to be, because that's the sort of story that they're telling. And contrast that to, random example because I watched it recently, Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne in I Saw the TV Glow. Their performances are so restrained, so minimal. And that's deliberate too, because that's the kind of story that director Jane Schoenbrun wanted to tell. The acting is very different, but it's all good acting, because acting has to serve the text, as we say. It has to tell the story, and these are very different stories. Part 4, the team. Fortunately, when you're an actor, there is a whole team of people who are there to help you out, and their work can really make or break a performance. I'm going to focus again on Dracula's ex-girlfriend here, mainly because I own the rights to the movie, so I can show you clips from it and behind-the-scenes photos, and there's no problems with copyright. Our director on decks was Valentina V, and she was also our director of photography, which means she was in charge of lighting and camera angles, and she is amazing. The really big lighting changes that make the movie pop, that was all Valentina.
Some people are friends with their exes.
My ex is Count Dracula.
At various points throughout the film, characters get text messages from Dracula, and it was Valentina's decision to have those physically be on our phones rather than as little pop-ups. And that's a little bit of extra work, because it's hard to film a phone screen without reflections and glare and stuff getting in the way, but if you get it right, it's really worth it, because it just keeps us in those tense moments. Makeup really tells the story too. Our makeup artists on this were Danny Rose and Blair O'Leary. You might notice that Morgana's character, Faye, has a little bit more colour in her cheeks, whereas Belladonna is more pale. A little bit of foreshadowing of the story's twist there. Another nice detail, Faye's eyes have an inner highlight and the waterline is clear, whereas Belladonna's are ringed in darkness. And the costume department plays a huge role too. Early on in the film, we learn that Belladonna's clothes were chosen by Count Dracula, and so we're learning a lot about him through what she's wearing. Our costume designer, Brianna Quick, was given the brief, make a costume that looks like it was picked out by a straight guy for his girlfriend who he doesn't really love, and he doesn't really care about comfort or practicality. And also he's really creepy. And she completely nails this. Like, Belladonna doesn't even have a jacket, and she is wearing these shoes which are just so impractical. The way that Belle plays with her phone, a lot of her hand gestures that she uses when she's speaking, are really shaped by the fact that she's got these massive nails on. If you have sharp eyes, you might notice that Faye has her nails cut short on her index and middle fingers. This is called a lesbian manicure. If you have long nails, it can be difficult or painful to we can deduce a lot about her. We can deduce that she dates people with vaginas, and also that she cares about their pleasure. And that's in contrast to Belle, whose nails are what you would call well, you'd call them dick grabbers. Also, fun fact, in the USA, a lesbian manicure keeps these two nails short, whereas in the UK, a lesbian manicure keeps these two nails short. Different strokes for different folks. Belle also has the word Dee tattooed on her neck. Her boyfriend is Count Dracula, but she doesn't call him Count Dracula all the time with his full title. That would just be silly. So she calls him Dee. short for Vladimir, and also it sounds a little bit like Daddy. The tattoo is a reference to Andrew Tate, who got some of his alleged victims to tattoo his name on their necks. So again, it's kind of a hint at what this relationship is like. That tattoo is a special brand of temporary tattoo that lasts about 2 weeks. So when we were in LA filming, I was just walking around town with that horrible thing on my neck and just felt very, very gross about it. Part 5. Writing. Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend is about 2 women dealing with the trauma they have from their toxic ex, Count Dracula. And I first came up with the idea a couple years ago when I was supposed to be in a stage adaptation of Dracula here in London that got cancelled because of COVID. But the idea kind of stuck around in my brain of using vampirism as a metaphor for abuse and toxic relationships. The film is definitely not subtle about that. Like, it's very on the nose that this is what we're talking about. And that's partly a constraint of time, like we've only got 30 minutes because it's a short film, but also it's a stylistic choice that I went with deliberately to contrast it to my previous project, The Prince. The Prince was a stage play that we put on in London a few years ago, and it's all written in Shakespearean verse. It's about characters in the Shakespeare multiverse beginning to realize that they're trapped in plays and trying to break out. Because it's in Shakespearean language, there's a lot of detail in the writing. A friend of mine who's an English literature grad recently pointed out something about one particular syllable in the whole play. The flip side of that, though, is that it's perhaps less accessible to a general audience. So with Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, I wanted to make something that's very, very clear. Everyone can follow it. There's clear arcs, there's strong characters. I was focused on the fundamentals. There's one scene that happens in the middle of the film that I think we can zoom in on and analyze the writing in detail. And it's the one that takes place in the bathroom.
You have really changed.
I'm using this new lip plumper Dee Dee bought me. You should really get some.
This first pair of lines sets the tone for the whole scene. Faye keeps trying to have a real, in-depth, serious conversation about Dracula and Belladonna's relationship, and Belladonna just doesn't want to go there. When Faye says, "You've changed," she's pretty obviously describing Belladonna's personality and how being with Dracula has changed her. But Belle replies with a line about her makeup, and then a little dig at Faye's appearance.
Are you a feminist or...
Absolutely. Women should have all the money. I don't have a problem with men. Alexander seems fun.
That line, "Are you a feminist?" is an interesting one. Morgana and I went back and forth on that because on the page it looks like a bit of a leap, a change in topic. The line definitely speaks to Faye's character and backstory. We learn earlier on that she's trying to become a therapist for supernatural creatures, so that analytic mindset fits there. But also, more fundamentally, her arc throughout the film is having to confront the trauma of what Dracula did to her in order to heal from it. And at this point, she's not ready to go there yet. She's not really ready to admit her vulnerability, and so she's still approaching the topic from this quite detached and intellectual place.
People even have sex under feminism.
Me and Marcy have sex.
Yeah, girl on girl, but I mean like sex. Have you ever done choking?
No.
Oh my god, it's so hard. Dee Dee's super into it.
Yeah. No, I remember.
He's been getting me to call him Master. He got me this tight little schoolgirl.
You said something about him that he gets off on controlling women.
Oh, fuck off.
Hey.
I don't want to take a feminist consciousness raising class from you, Catherine McKinnon, because then I won't be able to get real that I'm Dee Dee Daddy.
With her lines about girl on girl not being real sex and calling Dee Dee master in bed, we get the impression that Belladonna thinks real sex requires a man in control. The line about her putting on a schoolgirl outfit for him went through a few different revisions. I think she originally said that she and Dee Dee are in a 24/7 DDLG relationship, and that stands for Daddy Dom Little Girl, if you're not aware. It was Valentina who pointed out that a general audience might not be familiar with that term or might not be able to hear it because it goes by quite quickly. I also spoke to some people who are sincerely into that kind of thing who felt that the line was a little bit kink-shamey. There are people who really do incorporate schoolgirl outfits and power play and choking into their sex lives in real life, and of course, when that's done consensually in a risk-managed way, that's completely fine. In this particular scene, though, we take that in conjunction with all the other stuff we've learned about Dracula and Belle's relationship, and the inference that we draw is that he's probably not doing this in a healthy way.
I don't want to take a feminist consciousness raising class from you, Catherine McKinnon.
Catherine McKinnon is a feminist philosopher. The fact that Belle reaches for that name as an insult, just like, kind of a deep pull. It tells us something interesting about her, which is that she is pretending to be less intelligent than she really is. It's not that she's incapable of having this discussion, it's that she is refusing to. When I wrote this little exchange, I was thinking about the philosopher Michel Foucault and his book Power/Knowledge, in which he says that power doesn't just tell us no and oppress us, it also gives us opportunities. Yes, Belladonna is in an unhealthy relationship, but part of the reason she doesn't just leave is that it also offers her opportunities and certain kinds of pleasures, albeit qualified ones. There is a pleasure to turning herself into an infantilized sex doll for Dee, in mastering the skills of the hair and makeup and in attuning herself to what he wants. That is a skill that she enjoys mastering, as messed up as that is. Then we get this moment where Belle pushes Faye back against the wall and another character enters the scene. This character is called Kathy in the script. She's played by Christy Totillo. This moment was Valentina's idea, and it's partly just a very funny joke, but it's also why this scene is low-key my favorite. So, Faye is a transgender character. Morgana specifically requested that be the case. Belle isn't. And that's not really mentioned, doesn't really matter for the movie, I just felt it would fit that way. Both of us actors, though, are trans women. And I think that makes this scene quietly a little bit radical, especially in our current political context, because here's two trans women actors on screen having a discussion about feminism and women's place in society and our relation to men and patriarchy, literally happening in the women's bathroom. And nobody questions our right to have that discussion. What is Kathy disgusted by here? Did she overhear the conversation? Does she think that they're pressed against the wall because they're about to kiss and it's a homophobic thing? Did Kathy, the character, clock Faye, the character, as trans and objects to her being in the ladies' room? Those are all possible readings, but there's also the meta-textual reading. Did Kathy, the character, clock the actors, Morgana and me, as trans and objects to that? We don't know. She never gets a line. The fact that she's upset about this is literally a joke. This scene has a parallel in The Prince. In that play, in Act 1, there are two characters called Jen and Kate who have a discussion about women and women's place in society. In that scene, both the actors and the characters are trans, and Jen has to try and explain feminism to someone from the 15th century who finds equality unimaginable and womanhood uncomfortable. I like writing scenes like this. It's interesting. I think that trans people, by dint of having a uniquely broad experience of human life, live on both sides of a wall, as it were, I think we have a lot to add to these sorts of discussions. Anyway, back in the scene, Faye lectures Belladonna.
So, he controls where you go, what you wear, your friends, your sex. He gaslights you.
He does not gaslight me! Disengage your lesbian feminist therapist brain.
Morgana absolutely nails this scene. Faye is almost contemptuous of Belle. Maybe because she was in a bad relationship like that once upon a time and recognizes the things that she's doing here. But Belle doesn't understand any of that. She just feels condescended to, and so she insults Faye back. In particular, she uses lesbian as a word to hurt her. This was Valentina's suggestion, and it's not the only time in the movie Belle says something outrageous.
When you really think about it, vampirism's like a really advanced eating disorder.
It's the good kind of eating disorder, though. The kind that makes you hot.
Yeah.
Belle likes to be edgy and provocative. She likes to get attention by saying outrageous things or by being hypersexual, and it's all part of this I'm fine, everything's good, nobody can touch me, I can do whatever I want act that helps her avoid the big hole inside her. Both characters are doing that, but in different ways. Faye goes high by intellectualizing things, and Belle goes low by being Belle. Then Belle starts to rationalize Dracula's abuse.
Disengage your lesbian feminist therapist brain. He doesn't show love the way a human would. He speaks every language and he's been everywhere. I barely remember 9/11. He remembers the last 20 9/11s. It would be naive of me to expect him to love me like a human.
Maybe that's where you went wrong.
This is a little detail from real life. I was in an abusive relationship once, a long time ago, and my abuser was a genuine genius. Really, multilingual, fantastically intelligent. And I used to rationalize my abuse by thinking, well, they're so much cleverer than me, so I guess that if I feel bad, I must just be wrong. When Belladonna throws it all back in Faye's face and insults her again, Faye just leaves the scene. She's not ready to be vulnerable yet. And then we get to... This is the big moment where the whole movie turns. Faye has gotten dozens and dozens of obsessive messages from Dracula. He is not over her at all. And this is new information for the audience that ratchets up the tension. Will Belle find out? Why hasn't Faye told her? How will Belle react if she discovers this? By the way, all of those horrible, horrible messages were written by me, and I had to send them to Morgana, so worth going frame by frame and trying to read them. Belladonna gets some text messages from Dracula too. First of all, we see that she's been reporting back to him about what Faye is ordering and eating in the restaurant. And then we get this message from him, you may not eat. There's no doubt now, this is definitely an abusive relationship. Dracula commands Belle to give Faye a gift, we don't know yet what that is, and he threatens her with forcing her to eat insects if she refuses. If you've read the original Dracula novel by Bram Stoker, you'll remember that Renfield, Dracula's thrall, eats bugs as a sign of how desperate and driven to madness he is. If you don't get that reference, then it just appears as a very, very extreme demand. So either way, we now understand something about Belle and Dee Dee's relationship. Belle is not free. She is not equal. This is not a loving relationship between partners. She may not even be able to meaningfully consent to all of the sexual stuff she's just told us that she and Dee Dee get up to. Everything that she said up to this point is now recontextualized in a very nasty way. And the central dramatic question of any script is thereby reasserted: what's going to happen next? Part 6. Actually making and selling a movie. I've got my executive producer outfit on. Do you like it? Okay, so once you've got a script and you've done your rehearsals, you actually have to shoot the movie. And the first time we tried to shoot Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, we failed spectacularly. We were supposed to start shooting in February 2024, and there was a last-minute problem with the paperwork. When I say last minute, I was actually in full costume and makeup, and we were 15 minutes away from the first shot when we got the phone call saying, you have to shut down production. I was in tears, Morgana was in tears, Valentina was a pillar of strength, actually. Dave, the CEO of Nebula, the production company who were financing the film, was on set when this happened. Dave went away, he made a phone call, and he came back and he said, Abby, this is going to cost us $1,000. But, he said, we've already taken care of it. The person who messed up has had that job taken away from them. We are going to come back in a few months when all the paperwork is sorted. We're going to do this again and do it right. And in the meantime, I am taking you, Morgana, and Valentina to Disneyland. Morgana and I went for some really big ice cream, and then I just cried in my hotel room for the rest of the day. But the next day, true to his word, Dave did take us to Disneyland. And it was the most fun we could have that wasn't making the movie. Would the CEO of Netflix or HBO do that? I don't know if they would. We did eventually shoot the movie, but even then, my work was not over because then everything else has to happen. The editing, the sound mixing, the color grading, the marketing, the merchandising, all of the stuff that comes under post-production. And this is where I got to get some experience as an executive producer, because I wasn't just the writer and the actor on this. I got to have a leadership role too. Nebula is all about giving the creators more power, so I got to give notes on the sound design and on the color grading and on the design of the merchandise. Valentina does the lion's share of that stuff because she's the director, obviously, but it was really cool to have a seat at the table there. I actually really enjoyed helping with the merch and with the marketing, so like I've got my Dracula's ex-girlfriend poster in the background there, and there's the Dracula's ex-girlfriend stickers and like the mug with the tagline on it. Like I wrote that tagline. Like it's cute. The next thing after that is press. So Morgana and I did a lot of press for Dracula's ex-girlfriend. I also had to do quite a bit of press for House of the Dragon as well. I don't think anyone expected Sharako to be such a breakout character in season 2. It is a skill doing press interviews. They're often quite rapid fire. You have like 15 minutes with each person, and there's a lot of saying the same thing over and over again, but also it's a collaboration. And I want to give the journalists who are writing pieces about the show, like I want to give them something cool to write that they'll be proud to put their name to. I mean, they say that if you want a career in entertainment, you've got to have two things. You've got to be unique and you've got to be good to work with. And for me, being good to work with covers the entire span, all the way from having the first idea right the way through production, post-production, press, and the red carpet. Speaking of red carpets, they can be part of the job too. My first red carpet was a few years ago with The Prince. That was a lot of fun. I didn't really know what I was doing. My first big red carpet was this year. That was in London with Star Wars. And I'll be real with you, I was really terrified. Because like, I really wanted to make this show look good. I really wanted to make Leslie Headland, the creator, look good, you know, because she believed in me and she wanted me to be in it. And I also knew that I was gonna get held up for, you know, trans representation, which is a whole other part of my job as an actor, specifically in my public-facing stuff. So I the day before the premiere, I was like practicing my poses in the mirror and like trying the dress on and like steaming it and just like trying to make sure it was as good as possible. I stole this coaster from the Star Wars Acolyte after party, and now I just have this. I have this completely unique piece of Star Wars memorabilia in my house. Red carpets are fun, but if you're in the project, then that is work. That is going to work, and the pressure is on. It's not really a party. For Dracula's ex-girlfriend, I had to meet a lot of fans. I had to keep people entertained and chat to industry people and like make sure that they're enjoying it, talk to managers and agents and so on, like take pictures and sign things, and it is going to work. It was 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Hollywood the night of the Dex premiere, so we were working hard that night. And then once you've done the premiere and the movie or the TV show is out there, that's it. And you just hopefully get to start all over again. Hopefully. Being frank, I think that given recent political events in the United States, I wouldn't be surprised if studios started getting a little more conservative about the things that they commission and the people that they cast in those things. That has already been happening a little bit in my career. I remember a few years ago trying to get work in theatre in London, and some theatres just straight up saying, we don't work with trans people, which is illegal in Britain. Not that there's really anything you can do about it if someone tells you that in a face-to-face conversation and you can't prove it. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are or what your process is. Sometimes my work is judged not by the work, but by how I was born. And yeah, that sucks. I have found in the last few years that Americans tend to care less about it than Brits do. We'll see how that changes. One of the reasons I like working with Nebula, actually, is that they don't do that. They took a chance on me with The Prince and with Dracula's ex-girlfriend, and it paid off. They don't care. They don't care how I was born, and that's really nice. If you, like me, believe very strongly that the industry should not make decisions about commissioning or casting based on political expediency, and that actually artists of all different kinds should be judged on our art, then there is something that you can do about that. And that is to go and watch this film, please. When things like this do really well, then we get to go to those slightly more conservative, risk-averse, big players and say, hey, backing the artists, backing the creators, allowing people from minorities to make art really works and is also good business. So if you haven't seen it yet, please do go and watch this film. There is a link in the description where you can see it. It is only a click away. Plus, if you like the idea of artists being able to own our own art, Nebula is leading the way on that. I mean, I know that a lot of people are worried about that, especially after this year of strikes in the entertainment industry that we've had, and shows getting cancelled, and movies getting pulled for tax breaks and so on. A lot of people are aware that the Hollywood industry and sort of British Hollywood industry parallels don't give artists a lot of say. Well, Nebula does give artists a lot of say. Again, another reason I really enjoy working with them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed hearing about my acting and writing process. I really want to give all of you a window into this part of my life, because having my YouTube audience's support is part of what's helping me do this. I mean, literally, with Nebula. Like, that's how that works. You're a part of this crazy, unlikely career trajectory that I'm on. You're powering it. So I wanted to be able to give you a little route into it. Thank you so much for watching. I have lots of new exciting things coming in 2025, and I'll see you then. Bye.